Avatar: The Last Airbender. Arguably Nickelodeon's greatest property put to the silver screen. Many laud the show for its wonderful world building, filled with weird wildlife and imaginative magic systems to make the world completely new, yet somewhat familiar. In this video, I will rank every best Oh, I wonder who that is. Oh hey, Alien Evolution! Funny to see you here. Is there something I can do for you?
Hey dude, it's good to see you too. Although you do realize you're on my channel?
Ooh, I am, aren't I? My bad, I get lost pretty easily. YouTube is a big place after all. Anyways, I was just starting to make a video ranking every animal in Avatar: The Last Airbender based on how plausible they would be as Earth animals. And I was thinking, since you're here, would you like to join me?
Might as well. Sounds fun.
Works with me. So, before we rank the animals, let's describe the rules and the tiers on the tier list. The tiers place every animal and spirit in specific ranks that are listed from top to bottom, with the top being more plausible in our opinion, and the bottom being least plausible to evolve in a natural context. These videos will examine the morphology and behaviors we see in the shows, comics, and other media of the Avatar universe, and try to guess how those designs could have evolved or help that animal in its environment. The tiers rank from just an Earth animal, or animals that are taken from Earth directly with no changes, all the way down to supernatural beings, or forces that are beyond our understanding of biology and cosmology, and thus not very likely to evolve. Also, we may not get to every single animal depicted across all Avatar media in this video, so if we do miss any that you want us to rank, let us know in the comments below. Now, before y'all get bored, let's get started. Water. The water tribes, living primarily in the polar regions of the world of Avatar, share their snowy territory with a host of unique animals found nowhere else in the world. The vast majority of these animals are cold-adapted birds or mammals, needing vast amounts of warmth to stave off the frigid temperatures and harsh conditions. Besides the territory of northern and southern water tribes, found in the North Pole and South Pole respectively, there are also the foggy swamp waterbenders deep in Earth Kingdom territory, and some of their animals will be represented in this segment as well. Let's start somewhere nice and humble with the buffalo yak. Now, buffaloes and yaks in the real world are extremely similarly related, splitting off from each other evolutionarily very recently. It seems rather plausible that a buffalo could take on traits that make them superficially look more yak-like via convergent evolution, or different animal groups evolving similar structures or appearances to fill a similar niche, or the other way around with a yak becoming more buffalo-like. Also, their large and stocky body is well built for its environment deep in the Arctic Circle of the world of Avatar. I will give this animal A tier for its traits seeming rather plausible to evolve in a bovine clade. The next group of animals is rather tricky to say the least, or I should say, fishy? Across the shows and in the books are a variety of undescribed fish, from the polluted river fish in Season 3 to the fish Sokka failed to catch in the very first episode. Since fish are simply animals we have in our world, with hundreds upon hundreds of different species, we have no choice but to give the undescribed fish in the series S tier. Other fish that are more important, such as Tui and La or elephant koi, will be mentioned later on. Koala otters, in comparison, are a much messier animal. With a koala-like head and an otter-like body, this animal embodies the chimeric nature of many creatures in this setting. Whilst this makes iconic animals that serve as many purposes as the creators could make for them, on a list such as this one, they become more of a nightmare the more disparate the components of the chimera are. Some problems may arise depending on what this animal is more based on compared to the other. For starters, if the koala otter is a marsupial like a true koala, it may have some problems with its joeys in the pouch. The joeys could freeze or drown in pouches, or maybe the mother has to stay out of water for weeks at a time, putting these animals in a distinct disadvantage for the niche. If they're more otter-like, then what is up with their large ears? In cold climates, such as where koala otters are from, especially for aquatic animals, ear sizes become smaller. This happens as a method to retain heat better and to streamline the body in water. How a polar aquatic animal retains comparatively large ears is a big problem that needs to be answered, but isn't entirely impossible. Because of that, I'm going to give this adorable beast B tier. Otter penguins are another otter hybrid that has some unique features to say the least. Besides being one of the first animals seen in the show, and being the animal used for the iconic penguin sledding of the first episode, this strange beast has a trait seen sparingly here and there across the Avatar setting: 6 limbs on a tetrapod. On a tetrapod, this trait doesn't really exist unless in an animal with a rather bizarre pathology like a conjoined twin. How this animal got an extra set of flippers, which likely came from 2 sets of wings, is rather unclear, but it's not entirely impossible, and the animal at least seems suited for its environment in the South Pole of their world, so I will give them a C tier rank. Another hybrid animal from the south is the polar bear dog. This massive predator is strong, swift, and in most cases dangerous. However, Korra's personal pet is perplexingly plausible. In the fossil record, the Miocene contains a group of animals suspiciously similar to Naga and other polar bear dogs. The Amphiscions, otherwise known as bear dogs, existed before the split of ursids and canids, and superficially, they do look like a hybrid between these two animals. However, since these animals have been extinct for at least a few million years here or there, we'll give the polar bear dog A tier for being plausible but not really an earth animal. An animal that hosts a stranger position on the roster is the tiger seal. Tiger seals seem similar in appearance and niche to leopard seals on Earth, eating fish and likely preying upon the previously mentioned otter penguins. They seem to be mainly seal-like, with stripes likely used to distinguish themselves from each other. Since this animal has a very valid niche and series of adaptations, I'm going to give this animal A tier. Another seal that may not get the seal of approval of A tier is the turtle seal. This animal has a lot going on, from the seal-ish limbs to the turtle shell. How this animal thrives in its environment, let alone evolve to fit that environment to begin with, is a very hard question to answer. Sea turtles evolved the shell before hitting the water, so that means something similar for the ancestral turtle seals, with reptilian-esque features. I mean, it could work, but this one's going to need a lot of explaining, to be honest. Because of that, this animal encompasses the C tier on our list. Going back to more familiar beasts, wolves are present in both poles of the planet in the Avatar world, and are quite similar to the wolves of our timeline. Given they share their environment with massive predators such as polar bear dogs, they would likely be smaller predators with a niche similar to coyotes on Earth, in the shadow of much larger apex predators. These smart and social animals use their numbers and their intelligence to take down prey, as opposed to brute strength alone. These wolves easily gain S tier. Yak are animals that are also from Earth. In our world, they are domesticated animals found around the Himalayan region of Asia, a rather cold and snowy environment. They would fit well in either pole of the Avatar world, with the only question being why they're here as well as the buffalo yak, and if they compete with each other. Competition or not, I have to recognize the animal is just an Earth animal, so I have to throw it up in S tier. Moving from the Arctic grounds into the heart of the Earth Kingdom is another group of waterbenders, the Foggy Swamp Tribe. In their lands, they share the waters with large beasts such as elbow leeches and cat gators. Elbow leeches are massive leeches that don't always suck on elbows, but are ceremonially given the name by the gang in Season 2. Leeches on Earth max out around 1.5 feet long, with this animal firmly in that margin of error. Because of that, we'll give elbow leeches S tier. Cat gators are the domestic animals of the Foggy Swamp peoples, keeping them around for companionship and likely for assistance in hunting as well. Some folks are allegedly put off by their appearance, but that doesn't stop the Foggy Swamp Tribe from keeping these underrated pets. These animals look quite similar to ancient amphibians of the Mesozoic, such as Koolasuchus, where their only unique trait that's slightly harder to explain are the catfish-like barbels. Whilst this makes navigating the murky swamp water easier, how they got that trait is the challenge that needs to be answered. But because of that doesn't seem to be too big of a feature. We can give this animal B tier and move on. The last animals, or beings in this case, credited to the Water Tribe's territory on the world of Avatar are two fish, Tui and La, the water and moon spirits. These fish have magical properties, turning the moon different colors if interacted with poorly and restoring health to sickly children. Swimming around in a shrine in the North Pole, these spirits are damned to the bottom of the tier list, as they are supernatural beings. The key that puts them in F tier instead of D tier is that there aren't multiple spirit fishes, just these two, constantly swimming in a circle with each other. Less of a real animal and more like a Leviathan or spiritual fish?
Earth.
The Earth Kingdom is a massive land area that takes up most of the land of the Avatar world. This location is also the most diverse in climate types across the continent. Vast desert, lush rivers, islands, mountains, jungle, forest, and even thick urban environments. Because of the diversity of biomes and climates, the Earth Kingdom boasts by far the highest number of animal species across the planet. Starting off, we have so many animals under the territory of the Earth Kingdom, so we're just gonna run through some of the animals that we already have in our world before judging the fictional ones. Cats, dogs, bears, rabbits, foxes, frogs, and meadow voles all get the S tier. They're just animals from Earth, so judging them on plausibility is just kind of ridiculous. Plus, we have a lot more fun animals to get to, and we don't want to be here all day. So let's keep going. Another quirk category we can swiftly go over for the Earth Kingdom animals is many of them have the problem of being really, really big. If they were a bit smaller, they would likely rank higher on the list, but there are problems with these massive beasts. The biggest issue, no pun intended, is overcoming the square cube law. This limits the size of animals on a physical level, as animals too large can't sustain themselves on multiple fronts. Breathing, finding enough food, and holding themselves up against gravity are primary problems that limit the size of creatures. As the larger an animal gets, the more calories they need to eat, and the more space in their body they have to dedicate to lungs and legs. Some animals, such as the giant rhinoceros beetle seen in Appa's Lost Days, are the epitome of this issue. Earthly beetles and arthropods broadly max out at smaller sizes due to their lung structure being more inefficient compared to tetrapods. So seeing beetles the size of massive megafaunal mammals is rather implausible to say the least. Canyon crawlers are another example of being massively oversized arthropods? According to the wiki, they're a hybrid of crocodiles and spiders, but that actually surprised me. Another problem with canyon crawlers is, what are they eating? These animals are native to a desert region similar to the Grand Canyon, so animals of this size need lots of big prey items to eat. Otherwise, they would just starve. The same story is true for buzzard wasps, which have a hive set up in the most inhospitable environment in the mainland, the Siwang Desert. At least for the buzzard wasps, they can fly around and scavenge animals that made it into the desert and died, so I could see an argument for C tier for them. Elephant koi, on the other hand, I don't really see much of an argument for, as these colossal carp are going to have to struggle with finding food to keep them that large. For all four of these animals, I'll go with D tier for them all. Way too darn big. However, these four animals are nothing in comparison to the two titans, so big and so ferocious they influence the cultures around them, and more on a scale of kaiju compared to normal beast. The serpent from the Serpent's Pass and the unagi are both massive creatures that are more legend than animal. What makes these two animals F tier instead of D tier is that they are more like supernatural beasts or kaiju than conventional creatures. There's not multiple unagi, there's only one unagi. The unagi. Same thing with the serpent. It's one Serpent's Pass, not multiple Serpents' Pass. F tier. One of the animals deep in the Earth Kingdom's interior are a large number of domesticated animals, such as the hybrid pigs. I hate the hybrid pigs. Get them out of my sight. D tier, vile. Moving on. Ba Sing Se is one of the most important cities in the franchise, a megastructure that has influenced the local biosphere on a scale of the largest cities on Earth. Ba Sing Se is quite similar to cities on Earth with their urban animals. Some animals thrive better in urban environments than they do even in the wild, rats and pigeons being the best example in our world. In Ba Sing Se, two animals that take advantage of the paved streets and piles of trash abandoned by humans are the hog monkey and the pygmy puma. Hog monkeys are primates common across their world, mostly in the Earth Kingdom. They look like a generalized cercopithicoid old world monkey, but with a short face. Non-human primates regularly toy around with humans in cities, stealing trash or drinks or other food. Pygmy pumas in urban environments take on a role similar to feral house cats on Earth, hinting at these animals being a potential separate clade of domesticated felids. Pygmy pumas would keep populations of small animals and birds down, as well as eating flesh that humans would not consume, such as the back of a butcher shop. Both of these animals seem rather plausible in diet and body plan, so I'll go with A tier for both. The Earth Kingdom also has a large amount of volants, or flying species, primarily with birds. The sparrowkeet is a colorful bird seen in the show, although not given much attention. Because of how Earth-like they look, they are practically indistinguishable from a passerine bird species, so I'll hand them A tier and move on. The turkey duck is another bird that is a common food item across the rural parts of the Earth Kingdom. These birds, however, mainly just look like a big duck. Also going to give these guys a basic A tier and move on. The screeching bird makes up the third part of the basic trio of birds in the Earth Kingdom, and honestly they don't have a lot going on. If they're your personal favorite animal in the series, good for you, but we'll also just give them A tier and move on. Reptile birds are my favorite animals in the show, and these guys have potential. Feathers derive from scales pretty easily and happened at least once for the lineage that led to true birds. Also, these guys are epic pets for pirates, and that is a plus. These animals look very similar to Archaeopteryx or other proto-birds in the fossil record, but with more coloration. Going with high A tier for this one. Pome Chicken are another animal that are similar to the reptile birds, but mixing with a mammal with a bird instead of a lizard. Feather structures evolving on a mammal is a bit strange, given that bats use a thin layer of skin for their flight surface, as opposed to the flight feathers of birds. If this animal were to evolve, the forelimbs would look a lot more bat-like than bird-like. However, the possum chicken has a thicker tail that it actually uses to hang from branches, a behavior that real possums don't actually do. Because of that, I'm going to give the possum chicken B tier. On the same level, cat owls would get the same rank as possum chicken. It's only fair after all. Since we're on the subject of birds, or at least bird-esque animals, we got the Ostrich Horse. These flightless mounts are one of the most effective creatures in the entire Earth Kingdom, being brought into battle and used for transport similar to horses on Earth. There were multiple extinct clades of flightless birds like Gastornis and the terror birds, which were as large if not larger than these guys in the show. Their only trait that really makes them horse-like is the external ears, but those could be convergently evolved using feathers to resemble ears. Going to place them at the bottom of A tier. Returning to the skies for a split second, we look at the Wolfbats. These massive chiropterans are predatory and reside in the caves near Amashu. These animals seem to be great on the ground and in the air as dangerous predators. Their anatomy doesn't look like they're good for long flight, but they're probably proficient in ambush hunting. Since they look a little too wolf-like instead of bat-like, I would go with B tier for these animals, but could be convinced of A or C. Giant flies exist in the Avatar universe, and they're surprisingly tame, at least compared to the beetles the size of elephants. This eagle-sized fly would work with the arthropod body plan, given the proper amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. The giant fly is seen primarily in the swamps or more lush regions of the show, which would make sense as these animals would probably need to eat a lot for a dipterid. B tier. The Eel Hound is an interesting plot device, animal, to exist in the show. Primarily seen in the finale of the show, some of the gang uses it to get across the world at an extremely fast pace. Being the fastest animal both above and below water, this beast is good in two worlds. However, the features that make an animal fast in water often preclude them from being fast on land, and vice versa. Because of that, I'm going to place the Eel Hound in B tier. Not impossible, just need some explanation. Rabaroos are animals that primarily resemble kangaroos with the floppy ears of some domestic rabbit breeds. Their only trait that's truly strange is the fact that they can have multiple joeys in a single pouch, which doesn't seem likely in a kangaroo. In kangaroos, there usually is only enough space for one, but it wouldn't be impossible for an animal similar to them to have multiple babies in a single pouch. Opossums of Earth have tons of joeys in each pouch, for instance. Because of that, I'm going to place the Rabaroo in A tier. The porcupine is a large omnivorous mammal covered in spines used for defense. Spines on mammals have evolved multiple times, so this adaptation tracks. They're surprisingly normal creatures, but their aggression against Appa during Appa's lost days knocks them to be the bottom of B tier. Yes, I know I'm biased, but if you disagree with our decision, we will put a tier list link in the description so you can make your own ranking. An animal that is in a strange limbo between tiers is the jackalope. They exist in the Avatar world and are rabbits with deer-like antlers. These animals historically are inspired by rabbits infected with papillomavirus, a disease that causes very sickly bumps. So a fictional animal inspired by real animals that have an infection? Does that make it A tier or S tier? Well, I'll just go with A tier. Moving on. Another animal that has a dubious position on the rankings is the singing groundhog. These guys are basically the exact same as the ones we have on Earth, but they are capable of making song-like vocalizations. I would put these guys in A tier with the same logic as the jackalope. They're mostly Earth-like animals with only one change. Now, what would an animal roster be without parasites? The cabbage slug is a pest that can ravage, well, cabbage. Slugs can be pests, so one that specializes for a specific crop like cabbage is very plausible, as various animals in our world specialize for specific species of plants to target or parasitize, much to the detriment of farmers and merchants. A tier. The Gilic Corn is an animal that lives in the desert, a lizard with grasping hands that it uses to grab and run away with eggs. According to the lore, these animals are close relatives to a massive Gilic Corn species that existed across the desert and went extinct very recently, which is neat. Lizards stealing eggs is a common behavior among reptiles, as well as having grasping hands that they can use to catch prey. A tier. Tiger dillows are an interesting animal, a supposed apex predator that is heavily armored with a banded shell. Shelled animals usually evolve these structures in response to high levels of predation. So one may question what is out there eating these predators. There's a fun question, but unfortunately we can't exactly answer that here. But those shells would only weigh this predator down and make taking down prey more difficult. B tier. In the outer ring of Ba Sing Se, the vast grasslands and crop fields are inhabited by some herbivorous animals. The fox antelope and the gemsbok bull are livestock animals in the region, and mainly resemble an antelope or a bull, with traits that don't make them necessarily too unique or fun. The fox antelope mainly has the fur pattern of a red fox, and the gemsbok bull mainly just looks like a generic horned mammal. In my opinion, these animals are kinda boring, but they do meet the requirements for A tier on the roster, being quite plausible creatures to evolve. Anyways, moving on to some more fun animals, we have a trilogy of elephant-like beasts. The camelephant, the elephant mandrill, and the elephant rat. In the case of the camelephant, this funky beast could possibly evolve, but being in a desert region, they would likely have larger ears for better heat distribution. Given the elephant-like face, this animal could likely be a more basal Afrotherian compared to other elephant forms, which haven't really changed that much. B tier. For the elephant mandrill, this beast is similar in many ways to a gorilla, a massive primate that eats grass and leaves. It seems plausible that in an environment without megafaunal animals, an old world monkey could evolve to fill that niche. I would give them A tier. The elephant rat has a funky trunk, something quite unique to elephants, but not something that necessarily needs to evolve again in large animals. The elephant's closest living relatives in the real world are the elephant shrews, after all, which look kinda like an elephant rat. A tier. Up in the mountainous region near Omashu, the purple pentapus reigns. This cephalopod lives quite far away from the water, where they are almost exclusively relegated to in our world. In speculative evolution projects, terrestrial cephalopods are one of the most popular archetypes. In this context, though, we don't really see anything unique about them, besides having only 5 limbs instead of 8. They likely have thicker skin to reduce water loss and lay eggs in snowmelt ponds, given how high up in the mountains they are. B tier. Could work. The Shear Sho is another fan favorite, showing up in the main show a few times and possessing a unique suite of characteristics. Its long tongue was tipped with a paralytic toxin potent enough to take down a sky bison in a couple of strikes, and enough to stun a human in one. This animal is blind, lacking eyes entirely, but makes up for that with the strongest sense of smell of the entire animal kingdom of Avatar. Almost too good of a sense of smell, as these guys are supposedly able to track down a single person across an entire continent if they get as much as a whiff of their target. Because of how potent their smell sight is, I'd settle for giving them B tier and move on. The Platypus Bear is a massive monotreme that is a super predator. This animal likely lives in river areas and eats fish and terrestrial prey. Also, the fact that they lay eggs is a very nice touch. It wouldn't be impossible for monotremes, or egg-laying mammals, to get to the size of a bear. We just don't have any extant samples of that. Because of how limited monotremes are today, it may be a struggle for one of them to evolve to that size, so I'll go with B tier for them. Dragonflies. I almost forgot these existed in the show, and I can see why. They're kinda cursed. They look similar to dragons, which we will talk about in part 2. I'll throw them in C tier for now, mainly due to the fact that they have 4 limbs and an extra pair of wings on top of that. With large predators around, there usually are large herbivores as well. The saber-toothed moose lion has a lot of traits from a lot of things. The extended canines, or saber teeth, have evolved multiple times in tetrapods on Earth, but antlers are more specific in being more exclusive to cervids. The body plan is similar to a carnivoran, so it seems that this animal may be a separate clade that evolved antlers independently of deer. That doesn't seem to be too likely, but it doesn't seem that a deer would de-evolve having hooves, being a trait that goes back tens of millions of years. Because this seems to be a lot more of a challenge to explain, I'll put these animals in C tier and likely call it there. Gorilla goats are in a strange position as well as the saber-toothed mountain lion. One could say these guys are the goat of Avatar-style chimeras, eh? Oh, well, I tried. Anyways, I don't know why a gorilla would re-evolve a tail or gain horns, or why a goat would devolve hooves and gain the gorilla body plan. Looking at this one just kinda makes my head hurt. C tier. Saving one of the most impressive for last on this massive roster is the badger mole. This animal is rather cool, but is in a strange spot. Their big traits that seem strange are their large body size for a creature that spends most of its time underground, and also their magical ability to mold the rock and dirt around them. You know, little things. The magic system of bending doesn't exist in our world, unfortunately, so an animal with that trait is inherently implausible. Going to have to place them in D tier because of that, But there is a difference between the badger moles and the water spirits in the north. Tui and La are special spirits, unlike the badger moles, in that badger moles eat and reproduce, much like biological organisms. Tui and La do not appear to do that, on the other hand, and that makes badger moles D tier and not F tier, like the spirits of water. Unfortunately, it looks like we are low on time, so we're going to have to split this into 2 parts. Part 2 will be on the Aspen Aspires YouTube channel, and that video will be linked in the description. If you enjoyed this video, comment below and let us know. If you make your own tier lists based on our roster, we have the link to that in the description as well. Thank you to Alien Evolution for this collaboration. It was a joy, and I can't wait to do more. See you around. And subscribe to both channels if you want to see collabs like this happen more often.
Thanks for watching, and thank you to Aspen Aspires for this collaboration. Check out part 2, link in the description, or hopefully on screen right now. Go watch it! Anyway, have a great day, and we'll see you next time!